Welcome to segment 3 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, May the 19th. Our guest in this segment is Josh Ault. Josh is an assistant professor of business at UVic, and we're going to be talking about microfinancing. And as I said that, I thought, well, maybe you should tell us exactly what microfinancing is to start with.
Yeah, it's an idea that is familiar to some people. Some people have heard of it briefly. It's not super familiar to a lot of people, and a big part of that is because it's an industry that is not really found in developed countries like the US or in Canada. What this is, you can think of it, it's a banking industry, but what this industry specializes in is giving very small loans to poor entrepreneurs, which allows them to then build their businesses and be able to pull themselves out of poverty. It's kind of the, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, and teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. It's kind of that philosophy. You give them the money, they invest that into their very small businesses, and over time they can grow their businesses to actually start increasing their income and pulling themselves out of poverty. And it's a banking industry that primarily is found in developing countries around the world.
So, does it work?
There is some debate about that. There's a lot of back and forth on it. I personally believe that it does work. I think the better question is when does it work? What are the circumstances? So there has been some successes, and I think a lot of people might be familiar with some of the bigger names in microfinance, like Grameen Bank is one that's fairly well known. And I think that can be considered a success. There's been some misses, and there's been some crises around microfinance as well. There's a very famous crisis within the industry, a famous crisis that occurred in India, where the microfinance lenders were accused of predatory lending, very similar to what we saw in the United States in 2008, giving loans that people couldn't afford to pay back, giving loans to pay off other loans. And so that's a lot of what I'm studying, is looking at both the successes and the errors to see, can we learn and can we correct these mistakes to make microfinance work better?
Well, I seldom hear about microfinancing, but I've certainly heard about it. And when I hear about it, it's usually presented as something that does work at the level of the people who are getting the loan. I mean, that's what I hear, is that you need a little bit of money to start a business, a small family business, and if they give you that money, something can happen.
Absolutely. For a lot of these people, the thing that's missing is their access to capital markets. And so if that is the problem, if that is the disease, I guess, then providing them with that capital is certainly the cure. And so if done properly, I would agree with you completely that if it's done properly, I think it can lead to some very strong successes. And we have a number of stories of people that have been able to, there's people that have done nothing more than just be able to get their kids to school. But that's a success.
That's a huge success.
And you'll hear stories of people all the way up to where they'll get a business going and they'll start hiring their own employees and things like that. So, there's a range of successes, but absolutely, if it's done the right way, microfinance, I believe, can be a part of the solution to global poverty.
Now, when we were talking earlier, you just mentioned that in Bangladesh there are I think you said millions of people participating.
Absolutely. It's the last number I saw, and it might have changed in the last little while, but Bangladesh has tens of millions, 14, 16 million, somewhere in there, are officially participating, and then there might be even more that are participating unofficially. So in countries like Bangladesh and...
so if that's working well, and if it's helping people, then that would seem to be great.
Absolutely.
So you're the researcher. Is it helping people?
It is.
It is. So
Yeah. So the question is, again, so what I really go after with my research is, does it work all the time? And I think that that's a part of the issue with microfinance, is that when it started showing these incredible successes in countries like Bangladesh, Bangladesh is actually one of the locations where it really started, where the whole idea, like, really turned from an experiment into these viable organizations that could do it. And when we saw these incredible successes in places like Bangladesh, there was a little bit of euphoria, I guess might be the appropriate word, that we can now apply it to poverty everywhere. This is it, the solution. Even the founder of microfinance is famous for coming out with a saying where he said, in part because of microfinance, someday we're going to see poverty, we'll only experience poverty through poverty museums. It'll be a part of the past.
Yeah.
And what we're finding is that it was incredibly successful in Bangladesh, and there's a lot of places where it is very successful, but we're not seeing it succeed in all circumstances everywhere. So
nothing
as a silver bullet, it might not be, if that's what you're looking for, you might not call it a success. But as far as, under certain circumstances, in my opinion, it has been a runaway success.
So how would it work for, do you know any specific stories of a person, a businessman, somebody who needed a little bit of money to get something started, and they approached a microfinancing thing and got a little bit of money and made something happen? So what are the stories?
Absolutely. First, I mean, even from firsthand experience, I've, as part of my research, I have traveled to a number of these countries where microfinancing is used as a very important tool in fighting poverty. And so, I've gone in. I guess one of the best examples is I attended a number of meetings of microfinance borrowers in Mombasa, Kenya, which was a place where I just saw it just succeeding very well. You would go into these meetings where all the borrowers were, and the women that were borrowing, I mean, they would be dressed in nice clothing. All of them would have cell phones, which would also facilitate their business and things like that. They had their hair done very nicely and everything, and you could see a pretty strong difference. You would go outside the meeting and you just see kind of this rampant poverty. You would go inside the meeting and these women weren't wealthy by Canadian standards, but you could see a very strong difference inside versus outside. It's very fascinating to see.
So, I lived in Japan maybe close to 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And what I remember is in the center of most small towns and small cities was the station, the train station. Everything focused around the train station. And very often a part of the train station was a mall with all the big stores. But outside of that, when you walked out, were hundreds of family businesses. Mm-hmm. And something we don't really see here so much, just small businesses, but obviously enough to keep a family in Japan, alive and fairly prosperous, because Japan was a prosperous country with a big middle class. So is that the kind of business that gets started and provides a family with an income?
That's exactly what microfinancing is designed to do. So you have these people that'll run the family businesses where they might, sell bananas outside of the station, the train station. Yeah. I've seen those kinds of businesses as well. They might use the money to start a small furniture business where they just make furniture in their own home. They carve it themselves and then they can take it outside the home and sell it. They might start a small business doing animal husbandry, just buying goats or ducks or chicken, and they can then take the milk or the eggs and sell those.
So what the microfinancing does, it provides that initial, and it's only, I think you said, a few $100s in many cases.
Yeah, in a lot of these cases, when you're looking at these countries like Bangladesh, a lot of times $300, even as small as $75, a lot of times that's enough to buy a goat or to buy fish that you can sell in these kinds of markets that you're talking about. That's enough to kind of get that initial startup. They pay the loan back. They get another loan for a little bit bigger size. They can grow their business a little bit more. And the idea is that over time, you know, they're growing their business to where it's a viable income source where they can live a comfortable lifestyle on it.
Okay. So it can work for the people at the bottom, which is wonderful. Now, who provides the money?
There are a number of sources. So some of these organizations rely on donations. So they'll actually come to places like Canada, and we have a few organizations.
So these
here.
are just organizations who want to do some good work, and
exactly,
okay.
just like a charity. You know, they'll ask people for donations. Some of these organizations have become completely commercialized. They will actually earn revenue, and they'll use the revenue to fund the new loans, just like a bank,
okay.
here would. And then you get kind of everything in between. You get hybrids that are doing both. You know, you get organizations that are using peer sourcing, like, you know, the peer-to-peer type lending. I mean, you get a wide variety of different sources for capital. And
if people want more information, if you Google something like microfinancing, is that going to...
yeah, that might give you a very wide range of different things. It might be better to actually Google like specific organizations, and there's a number of very, very solid organizations out there. Kiva, which is Kiva, has a great website. It's kiva.org, where you can go in, you can donate your money, and they'll actually tell you the story of the person that you were lending the money to, and then when you're all done, they pay you the money back, and so they just act kind of as an intermediary.
Oh, that's right, because the money gets paid back.
The money, and that's a key part of microfinance. It has to get paid back. If it's just given to them for free and there's no responsibility there, they tend to spend the money. If they know that they have to pay it back, they usually invest it in a business. And so a lot of these organizations, Kiva is a great one, they put that responsibility there. You have to pay it back. And then if you give money to Kiva, they don't pay you interest, but you'll get your money back. Then you can donate it again if you want to or things.
Josh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. It's been enjoyable.
Microfinancing, something I think we've all heard about, maybe don't know too much about, but there it is. Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.